Hello, I'm Blade Boquest, and this is part 2 of the WAGON Reveal. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, let me tell you, you're missing out. It was a hype celebration video of my time in Black Desert. It was this investing scheme that I pulled off over 18 months, features 23 other streamers. I'm dancing through half of it. There's techno music. It's a good time. It's awesome. That's part 1. You guys should watch it if you haven't already, but it kind of took the Black Desert community by storm whenever I was actually premiering it live on Twitch. 1,600 people watched it. It's pretty exciting stuff. However, when I was editing this video, it ended up being an hour long, so that's obviously too long for a reveal. The second half of it was basically breaking down the spreadsheets. I wanted to know what the average consumption rate was of this particular commodity in the server. Now, whenever I could figure out that, then I knew basically by watching each day how many were sold, and whenever the events end and the prices go back up and the prices start going back down because investors want their money, I then knew how many extra of each accessory were in investors' banks. So that's what this video is going to be about. This is kind of the boring side of it. If you guys want to see the memes and the dances and all that stuff, watch part 1. This is a little bit more of an investment breakdown. So basically, even before I started playing Black Desert, I talked about how you can make money in the game. Just from reading books, The Richest Man in Babylon especially, you can kind of learn that the laws that govern the acquisition of money are universal and they're very practical. And one of the things you need to do is find a way to get a nice, safe return of your overall net worth that can compound and then grow from there. I kind of broke the income down into 5 categories: active income, passive income, interval income, opportunistic income, and long-term investing. I always had this theory that as long as you had enough money, you could invest well, intelligently, and expand that, even if it's only 10, 15, 20% over the course of many months, and that's going to get you more money than active income and passive and everything else. So my long-term strategy over the last 3 years has basically been accumulate more wealth so that I can use that and have it work for me. So basically, I noticed that we were coming into a perfect storm. So this is not going to be a history of different investments that I've had over the 3 years. I think I'll probably do one of those. There were quite a few of them. But in 2016, we had this instance where there was a Halloween event that gave out accessories. And we got one like about every, I think, day and a half or something along those lines. Not just accessories, just one of those event boxes that often had accessories like benchos, weapon cores, guardian seals, and things like that. And I bought a good amount of them, and then guess what happened after that? We had a Laura event, and we had already had a Laura event previously before this Halloween event, so prices were pretty dang low. In the Halloween event, I was like, okay, this is probably it, right? And then we have another lore event. Now, lore event gives out these accessory handout things, these boxes, even more often. So we had this trifecta of many months of just oversaturation of these items given out to the players in 2016, and it drove things like red core earrings down to 1.5 million. Benchos were actually about 1 million. Weapon cores were mid 2 million, sometimes even less. We're talking about absolutely bare bottom prices. And in 2017, I noticed we had a Laura event at the exact same time as 2016. We had a Halloween event at the exact same time as 2016. And so we had these accessory things going. I had about 10 billion silver or so liquid cash, not net worth or anything, just liquid silver at this point, and I was expecting and anticipating another Allure event. And so I was preparing for this perfect storm, so to speak, where these items would drop. Each one obviously has a different margin. Benchos I would try to get basically in the mid 2 millions, and then we saw it historically hit between 8 and 10 million multiple times. Same thing with weapon cores. You would see them go from about 3.4, maybe 4 million, up to over 10 million, and sometimes as high as 15 million, just in the last, 2016 to 2017 spread. And what I would do is map how long it would take to sell a certain amount of benchos, how long it would take to sell a certain amount of weapon cores and guardian seals and good deeds necklaces. And I basically ended up having a whole bunch of these spreadsheets that mapped how many get sold every single day. So at that point, I could pretty much just say, Alright, so on a standard 24-hour period, whenever there is no event, the average North American server consumption of this item is this. And then whenever there is a higher supply, where they're just flooded and they were sitting on the market and stuff like that, it didn't matter how many were sitting on the market. The only thing that mattered to me was how many were sold every single day. So it showed me the changes in consumption. So when I could see the additional consumption from the prices dropping and there being more supply and more people selling them, I could take how much of the supply was added into the marketplace over the course of the event, and then subtract from that the standard North American consumption rate and figure out how many additional basically were being introduced into the market that were likely not being used. Now, when the prices fall after the supply increases, there's obviously some amount that just get purchased and enhanced or melted and things like that, but this gave me a really good way to kind of track the investors as well. So then later on, basically I knew, okay, you know, is there 10,000 left in the market that is this surplus that people bought so they can resell, or is there only 500, stuff like that. So before Tuesday night, which was before every maintenance of Black Desert, so that would be Tuesday to Wednesday, the prices would invariably fall. And the reason they would fall is because the investors were not sure and they were uncertain and scared that there could be another event that would release additional accessories. So you could see these trends, and it was really interesting. So that gave me another picture of like telling me that I was correct and knowing how many of these, or like if investors still had them or if they didn't. That was a really good indicator. So, you know, it's very easy to like say there's only 500 left that investors hold or something like that, and maybe, you know, I'll have 200 or something. If I start trying to sell mine kind of aggressively, well, they just undercut me, and then I undercut them and they undercut me, and it goes back and forth, and then you lose all of the profit. Whereas if I say, okay, there's like probably 1,000 left or probably 500 left, that means it would take me 4 days, for example, in order for all of those benchos to be sold off the market. And at that point, there would no longer be an inflated supply because they would all be accounted for. At that point, I could begin to sell mine at the highest price without affecting the market, without affecting the price. And it really gave me an unheard of edge for this sort of investing. So I was kind of thinking like, okay, I can definitely get a high percent return on investment. You know, worst case scenario, I'm getting a 50% return on investment. If I can get ROIs, I'm shooting for between 20 and 50. And I'm mostly concerned about exit strategy whenever I'm doing these investments. So I'm thinking, okay, if I can't sell these, what is my next best option that I can use this for? And for benchos and for weapon cores and guardian seals and things like that, they're all meltable. So this is what I went for. This is what I wanted to invest in. The problem was there was no way to do it, right? Because with 10 billion, I would actually need to find a way to invest over 3,000 inventory slots worth of things, and it wasn't possible. I was like, how the heck am I supposed to do that? You know, you have tons of things in your banks, and like you could spend oftentimes it's about $1 per inventory slot to expand your own character's inventories, and those could be large stockpiles with way more money than I would ever spend on the game, and even that wouldn't be enough to take all of my liquid cash and get some kind of turnover within the next 4 to 6 months. And that was my plan. That was the idea of somehow ride this wave out for about 4 months, until I started thinking about stables and how wagons can have storage in them and things like that. So I was looking into the contribution that you could have in different cities, expanding your storage slots and how that would work, and if it would be worth the cost per contribution and all that, until you know, I realized you can remote collect, you know, if you have 3 things, you can remote collect another one. And I wasn't sure what the limits was, and I was streaming it, I was kind of brainstorming and thinking, though I didn't talk about this specific investment. And someone dropped that you can remote collect up to 20 horses in a stable. And that seemed odd to me. I was like, why would you be able to do that? And it was one of those things I didn't even want to try. I didn't want to be like, is that possible? Let's find out. But enough people in stream said yes, that you could remote collect up to this number of things. You could already remote collect wagons. So again, I didn't want to test it. So instead I emailed the company. I emailed Cacao and I said, hey, I would like to use wagons as storage and remote collect the wagons. Is this an approved method of playing the game? Is this acceptable to you to use this as storage? And they didn't know. They had to say, you know, I'm gonna check with the other parts of the company or the stable masters and things like that. And they got back to me later and they said, you are in the all clear. You're welcome to do so. You're able to have all of these wagons. You can have the storage, stuff like that. In the final wagon reveal, both Cacao and Pearl Abyss have retweeted the video. They've watched it, they've enjoyed it, things like that. So totally good to go. That was definitely an unusual, crazy, you know, way to play this game, of course, but it's an MMO, so a lot of the in-game comes down to what the community ends up doing. But when I started buying wagons, I mean, it took me a couple streams to basically buy wagons and put them in these stables. And people didn't know what I was doing, and that was one thing. Like, if I say, hey, I'm gonna buy these at this price and I'm hoping it's gonna go to this price, it affects the market, it changes it, and so what I would say that I wanted to do would then kind of be nullified. So I wanted to try it once, try this investment with these items, and if it worked, show everybody in this grand wagon reveal, and if it didn't work, have this grand unveiling of my greatest failure and just explain what I was trying to do. And then at that point, then, you know, show, okay, here's this great system. You can still use it for investing in whatever items that you see fit. And we've already seen, even though people don't think the method is valuable anymore, just obviously nonsense, that the benchos actually went from 1 million before the wagon reveal to now a price of 14 million on the North American server. So had people watch the reveal, learn the investment technique, then they could have also profited. But I wanted to just try it myself and see how this would go. So that's what part 1 was, right? So part 1, we had this crazy wildfire style of hype that was built up around these wagons. People were so excited about it because I was buying wagons and I wasn't explaining why. And if you guys are familiar with my stream, you have seen a lot of investments go really, really well.
There's something really funny that someone said in World Chat after he got like a PEN Laytenn. After he got his PEN Laytenn, someone was like, day 354 of Blade outplaying the entire NA market, something like that. And so that's sort of like stuck in my mind as like hilarious thing, because everybody thinks Blades does doing these crazy things and then he always ends up making profits.
And you have seen me think about what kind of profit could be in a market, and you've seen the entire market get sold out.
That's Deep Blade. Thanks. It's really interesting to me to think about economics and all this stuff, and it's all readable, guys. It's like fault lines in the earth. Like, you can read the markets and you can get in good positions, and your investments can make the difference. So I like to come over here every once in a while, analyze it. All right, so this, honestly, what I'm about to tell you might affect things from the rest of our game time. A lot of people are buying beer right now because you can do the little Oktoberfest and all of that stuff, and you can do the turn-in. But at the same time, it's often not worthwhile to spend your resources to make your own beer, unless you're just starting off. If you have less than 3 months playtime, it probably is. But for most others, we can't be bothered by it. So we end up getting locked behind the beer shortage of 1,300 for one beer. 1,300 and one beer is going to repair 2 stamina. That's it. People almost never look at the blue rare proc of beer, which is right down here. Cold draft beer. Look, it's cheaper than normal beer. But what does it do? It increases 3 worker recovery. So when people look for beer and they buy it off the marketplace, they are buying the wrong one. Almost always. There are 33,000 cold draft beer in the market. This stuff is hands down worth at least 22 to 2,500. So 2,000 to 2,500 silver is what I would pay for cold draft beer. See, look, there's 17. Don't panic, I said. We started this with don't panic. There's 14,000. Leave it for the peons of the world. There's 12,000 now. Guys, hang on. This is not, it's not my fault. No, it is. It is this time. Alright, well, I mean, hang on. Let's get this in the right perspective, everybody. Don't panic. Let's look at this in the right perspective. There were so many innocent players trying to sell 33,000 beer, and they couldn't sell it. This is not a market crash. It's fine. Everything is fine. Don't panic. Don't panic. There were 33,000 beer. There might presently be 0, I understand. There were 33,000 beer that players, innocent players, with families, jobs, and homework that they don't do. All of these players were saying, please, buy my beer. That's why they put it on the market. They wanted the silver, they didn't want the item. I just solved 33,000 problems.
On not just my server, but North America, the European servers. We had an instance in 2016 where all the coal was sold off of 6 different servers for the first time ever. Hundreds of thousands were gone. Had never been sold out on those servers before because I started buying it because I wanted to have it for when the game was going to change later on.
Don't panic. Please don't panic. No, relax. Don't panic. Relax, you guys. It's fine. Everything's fine. Relax. Everything is totally fine. Don't panic. We're not panicking. We are not in the process of panicking. There is nothing to panic about. There is no issue here. Don't you panic, stream. Don't panic. You guys are freaking buying it all. Get the hell out of here. Oh my god. You've got to be kidding me. There's 1,000 left, you jerks. I'm not even going to be able to make the full trip before it's gone. We're just going to... There's no way. I need to get more carry weight on my characters or a horse nearby to do this. This is crazy. I don't know what to do. How about you guys doing this? This is insane. Why don't you just cover your market window? I mean, I do. This is what I've been using. Right there. That's what I've had to use. But other than that... Proxy souls have a call too. You guys are so dumb. Oh my god. You don't know what you're doing. You're gonna lose all your money. Don't be idiots. I'm trying to help you, but I'm also trying to help myself. And I wanted to buy that. But you don't know why you want that. Oh. What am I supposed to do with you? What am I supposed to do with you, stream? Can you tell me what you're using it for? On my server it's down to 175. Big chance. Oh my god. I'm using it for steel, dude. Using it for steel. We can look back. Blackstone Powder Defense Force! Look at him go! Oh my god. I'm just saying that those of you that choose to list this one at a time are letting more people find out about the run on the Blackstone Powder, giving them more time. Telling you, it won't work out. It won't work out for you. You're still here doing this? Stop selling them one at a time. Stop. People's lives. My life. My time. Other people's lives. Other people's time. So people are powder blocking you. I think it's actually to try to stop. They're all ones. They're all ones! They're all ones! How many people are doing this?
And now people saw me buying wagons and not knowing why, and it went crazy. I thought I could pretty much just do this on my stream because it would take a while. I'm like, well, I gotta go live, you know, live streamer. But no, not even a little bit. This went all over the forums. I mean, views shot up. Everybody wanted to know. They would not stop talking about it. Reddit memes occurred. You had all these like little mini GIFs where people are in shock and like reading something like, I don't think this is just about wagons. I'm telling you, the community in 2017 all the way through 18 went completely nuts for these wagons. So if you were a part of Black Desert, you were waiting for this wagon reveal forever.
Dude, Blade, that meme was honestly legendary. You took it home and made it better than like I anticipated. I was with my girlfriend in a call when I was watching the video, and she didn't get it like at all why I was so excited about the video, because I was legitimately like, you could ask her. I was super excited about the video. I was so pogs, and she didn't get it, and I'm like what is in Blade's wagons has been a meme since I started playing BDO, I swear. Like, the mystery behind Blade BoQuest's wagons has been a meme of our community for like so long. So the epic reveal is actually like huge.
Tons of people guess constantly, and no matter what happened, I just said maybe, right? So I didn't want to ruin any of the potential hype until it was finally time for the reveal. Took 18 months for the whole thing to work. I ended up making over 30 billion profit in less than a week worth of time playing the game. So well worth it. It actually took me more time to make the first part of this video, Wagon Reveal Part 1, or the BDO Wagon Reveal, as you probably know it. It took me more time to make that video than it took to pay for my PEN Laytenn using this technique. So that's what that video was for. It was a big hype video. Again, if you haven't seen it, go watch that first. So now let's talk about the actual mechanics of how this all worked and why it worked. So basically, like I said earlier, you can remote collect wagons. You can remote collect the wagons up to 20 per stable. This is a game approved method, and I did this through about, I think, 18 stables, everything from Feria all the way over to Sandgrain Bazaar. I didn't use too much in Valencia, and I just littered everything with 19 wagons, not 20. The reason is because whenever you go there, whenever you're putting items in or harvesting them back, you would basically remote collect your horse to that stable and then take out one of your wagons. So I had 19 wagons basically in all these different stables, and it gave me an extra 4,500 inventory slots. That only cost me 60 million. I use farm wagons. They're things that I bought just from the NPCs. These are not wagons that I was secretly selling to inflate a market and selling my own wagons. There's a lot of rumors and slanders, concerning the whole thing, but it was just wagons, just farm wagons. 60 million for 4,500 inventory slots, and I've already begun to use that on my next investments. And you guys, if you're watching my live stream, you've seen that happen. So that's what the system was. And if you want to end up doing this yourself, what you'd have to do, the exact technique is, you need 2 different stables to start off with. You would be registering a wagon in one stable. You would be taking it out of that stable, and then you'd be running to a different stable, and you would remote collect that wagon to the second stable. Because after you have 3 in a stable, unless you're investing more contribution, and that's not what this method does, you can no longer register mounts or wagons in a stable, right? It's maxed, it's a soft cap of 3. So you go back to stable number 1, you register another wagon, you take it out of that, and you run to stable 2, and then you remote collect it. Then you go back to stable 1, and then you register another wagon, and then you go back to stable 2, and you do that. So when you're doing this, you actually have to kind of start on the right side of the map and then kind of move left. So I was registering wagons in Rock Post, northeast of Altanova, registering them there, taking them out, running to Sandgrain Bazaar, and remote collecting them. And I did that until I had 19 in Sandgrain Bazaar. And then I would go down to Altanova, and I would register them in Altanova, and then I would go over to Rock Post, and I would remote collect them in Rock Post. And I use Altanova as a mini hub, and then I'd go down to Aboon, and I would remote collect them from where they're registered in Altanova down to Aboon. And I would do the same thing in Tariff, and then in Kusha, and then in Stonetail, and all of these different places. So you have to be very conscientious whenever you're doing this, because you can screw yourself up. You might make it so you don't have any stables to register in, and you have to take them really far away and then walk back, because obviously wagon traffic is very slow. So another way to do it is, and this is a really good method just to do, it's a good idea to have a few extra 1,000 inventory slots for free. So you should probably be doing this with your guildies. You guys have already seen the results. They speak for themselves. But you can basically have a 2-seater horse and have somebody chauffeur you back and forth. You register a wagon, you hop on their mount, you go to wagon or stable number 2, you remote collect it, you go back to number 1, and this will take you several hours to build up. And then you just reverse that, and then you help that other person. If you don't have a friend, sorry, get a Mewa or a Musa, and then just kind of take it speeding to the next stable. So those are the mechanics of how to build this yourself. So this perfect storm that I was expecting was the repeat of the Laura event in 2017, the Halloween event in 2017, and I was expecting and anticipating another Laura event to match what we saw a year ago. At that point, I was going to invest my 10 billion after I figured out this wagon thing so that I could actually hold and store 3,000 of these items. And I started to buy a few of them at the end of the Halloween event. And then guess what? No second Laura event. It just didn't occur. So before I had invested in the majority of the things that I wanted to get, the prices started to raise. So it was kind of price prohibitive. I had already had a whole bunch of wagons. Nobody knew what I was doing with them. And I just kind of had to wait because the idea was solid, but it just was the wrong time. Early in 2018, I think in the first 4 or 5 months of that month, the prices raised enough so that I was able to sell everything that I bought in 2017, and then we had a Laura event or an Easter event during a hard and sharp event. So obviously the more hard and sharps events that happen, the more the prices are going to drop in these accessories that would be melted down for these sort of things. So both of those coincided, and if you can get dual events like that or back to back, it's just going to oversaturate and hurt a market, bringing it down in price, which is a good time to buy. So I was able to sell off a lot of what I did in the beginning of 2018 and buy a tremendous amount around this time. And as the year went on, I was really close to being able to get rid of my stuff again. Oh, I was so close. And then they came out with the treasure hunting thing. It was nuts. I still remember talking to Rinku Talks and Moreland TV at E3 explaining my wagon reveal that I thought was going to be done in the first 4 months, like 2017, September, October, to maybe January, February 2018. And here we are halfway through 2018, and this thing is not done. And then towards the end of 2018, I ended up basically with this treasure event. It released things that oversaturated the hard sharp market. There were just tons of them everywhere. Everybody was getting Caphras. It was that sort of thing, and it lasted so long that streamers basically started protesting it, changing their title to "Stop the Treasure Hunting Event." This made so much net worth, not even silver, it was a commodity increase. It made so much net worth. It was like about 100 million net worth per hour that people were just constantly going out there, and they did this for months, and it was really obnoxious. I hated it. But I hated it because it adversely affected my investment, of course, and then it also, in my opinion, just made it far too easy, where you're basically just fighting treasure chests and trees 24/7, and it nullified every aspect of the game that we had played for years and like built our systems up so that we can profit. It seems I don't like these things typically, even though I do still find ways to profit from them. So the event happened and it completely deflated the market entirely. So at this point, I actually couldn't get out of my wagon investments, and so I decided to kind of reinvest. I had been able to sell some in the beginning of 2018 before the Easter thing happened, and I was able to sell a bunch in like August or so before the treasure thing happened, and then I basically reinvested a huge amount, probably, and at this point I don't even know, we'll get to the spreadsheet portion in a second, you'll get to see a bit more, but like another 15 billion or something along those lines, that then of course doubled once I actually even more than doubled once I sold that stuff before the central market. So I had to wait an additional 8 months at this point for the whole wagon thing to finally happen. And I did not ever want it to be this long. This was like really a crazy extended thing that ended up happening. I remember I got into Lakari's podcast one time and I was just spammed by everybody just yelling, "What's in the wagons, Blade? We want to know what's in the wagons." And like,
no, Blade won't tell me what he's doing with those fucking wagons, man.
Wagons aren't important.
Blade, seriously, can you please inform me about what?
Oh my god, dude. You too, Lakari? Can't.
I really want to.
Come on, it's not a big a deal. There's thousands of people. They don't care.
Why? What are you doing?
It doesn't even matter. It's.
Blade, you're the center of so much controversy all the time.
Cut the bullshit here.
Yeah.
It's no big deal.
Blade folks doing something for nothing.
Yeah.
Like this story.
So,
I feel like one of the tier 3 materials to make that damn wagon.
Okay, how long before we know exactly what you're planning to do? At least tell me that.
It's so not important. I don't even want to put a date on it.
So like, I'm like, This is supposed to be a Siege podcast. Like, I don't like PvP that much anyway, and here I am hanging out talking with you guys. There's 2,000 people watching. Shut up about the wagons. Like, it was that sort of a thing for the earlier Black Desert community. So when the wagon reveal finally came out, highly anticipated. I wanted to fill it with memes.
My favorite part is the friggin' beginning bit where it's a commercial. I totally fell for it. I'm like clicking it and I'm like, why is it pausing it? Why can't I skip this thing? What is wrong? And it's a friggin', it's a bait. It's a bait. Oh my gosh, it was so just genius.
Keep it interesting. Have a high speed, 500 speed. It showed me buying items at certain prices. It showed me selling items at certain prices. And like I said, it featured 23 other streamers. I ended up dancing through half of it because it's mostly a hype celebration. So if you watched that and you were completely confused, that was what it was for. You may not have gotten that. Tens of thousands of you guys did. But then this video is explaining all of how that worked and what the thinking was behind it. So anyway, let's go into some of the earlier footage that I shot for when I thought this was all going to be one video, and that will explain a little bit more. Alright, so talking a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of this thing. I'm primarily not a spreadsheet guy. I haven't made that many for Black Desert, which is incredibly uncommon for life skillers, which I don't know. I've never really considered myself a life skiller so much as someone who life skills in addition to, you know, everything else, I guess. But anyway, I did make this. It's rather crude just so I could keep track of it. It's basically a database, right? So over here I have the name of the wagon, and I actually abbreviated them quite a bit because occasionally I would tab into this on stream and I needed to make sure that there wasn't enough information that people would find out what's exactly happening. So I took off a couple letters of these. But either way, so we have the wagons on the left, right? The name of the wagon, then we have the city that they're in. So at first I did actually start with a few things here in Valencia. We went down to Aboon. So the way this is classified, you guys don't have to memorize this, but just so you kind of understand it, this is, the first column was bench shows. So bench shows were in the first column, Pride bench shows were in the second column, duo bench shows were in the third column. So bench shows +0, Pride, duo right here. Then we have weapon cores next. So weapon cores, Pry weapon cores, duo weapon cores. Then we have Ancient Guardian Seals at +0, Pry Ancient Guardian Seals, duo Ancient Guardian Seals. And then at the very end were the Good Deeds necklaces. 11, 12, and 13 were basically unused, but additional accessories. Things like Marks of Shadow, Scarla, Tree Spirit belts, red coral earrings, witch earrings. Those kinds of things. Obviously that's more than just 3 categories, but I think I maybe got about 20 or so red coral earrings and maybe like, I don't know, 15 or so Scarla, and there were very few of the other ones that I would just pick up from the event itself. So going over this, let me show you what we have here. So generally if there's a 0 in the column, I have used this previously and there were 14 items in there, and then I've zeroed it out, and it was just a little bit easier to just show zeros so that I know that like I can kind of remember my history using these wagons and not mislabel anything. So the zeros were used at one point and then kind of like zeroed out. This is the third iteration. So the third iteration of my investing since October of 2017, which means I've had my list of wagons, I filled them up with stuff, I sold them, so they all went zeroed, and then I filled them up again, and then I zeroed it all out, and then I filled them up again. And I actually started to sell them at the point that I stopped and realized, holy crap, I need to show some of these records eventually for you guys, because you want to actually see the numbers. You don't just want to see the results. Remember, at first I thought this whole thing would basically be like a 4-month process, and I would just buy a whole bunch of stuff, sell a whole bunch of stuff, and then tell you how it went. But because of different events and circumstances, it became so prolonged that my records got better and better, and I eventually saved this. I think I started to sell a bunch of things, and then I was like, all right, let me make a copy of this spreadsheet as it is, and I'll just hang on to it so you can kind of see how it looks like. So every time I would put something into a wagon or take something out of a wagon, I would go over and update the count. So like this wagon would show 11 standard benchos, 3 pry benchos. This one had 10 standard benchos, 4 weapon cores. You know, this one apparently had a lot of the +0s at one time. Anyway, all those are not important. Now, item choice is important when you're understanding what I was doing. The reason I chose the major 4, right? Benchos, weapon cores, ancient guardian seals, and good deeds necklaces is because if they did not go up in price after the event stopped populating them, then I can melt them down. And melt them down would be my exit strategy, which means my worst case scenario is I basically have sharps and hards at cost, which is very usable or sellable, which is fine. I just wouldn't have a loss, which is, you know, when you're investing, if you could set yourself up to not have a loss, do it. It's a good way to go. But that only applies to the base level. So almost all of my investing was base level, not pry or duo, but I did occasionally buy these sort of things. Like a quick example would be I could easily buy pry for 10 million, and then I was selling pry for 30 million, and that routinely happened, which was a fantastic, awesome margin. So I would get a couple of them. My biggest problem eventually became I had too much money to invest quickly enough. Like if I had a couple weeks to invest, you know, 20 billion or something, it was a challenge. So I had to start buying more expensive things. I had to start throwing on the good deeds necklaces that might not have the best margin, but these things were more expensive than benchos, and then maybe start buying, you know, pry and duo weapon cores because they're typically used, pry and duo benchos because those are used. If you try to get pry and duo guardian seals or good deeds necklaces, they're not very useful. So what happens is you see after the events end, a whole bunch of pry, duo, and try accessories hit the market because these are not very experienced investors that are like, oh, hey, price is low, price will be high. They don't have any exit strategy, and so they actually can't get their money back. So 99% of my money went through the original +0 form, and that's important to understand. If you melt down a bencho necklace, you get 2 hard shards. If you melt down a weapon core, you get 1 sharp shard. If you melt down an ancient guardian seal, you get 1 or 2 sharp shards. And from many trials, an accepted number from this in the community is you get about 1.6 sharp shards on average. And then from good deeds necklaces, you get 2 hard shards always and 1 sharp shard always, with a chance of getting 2 sharp shards. So it's either 2 and 1 for good deeds necklaces or 2 and 2 for good deeds necklaces. So all 4 of these investments made sense to me. So as you can see, like just going through, we have right, Valencia was used in the beginning, but it's too far to make any sense to keep that up. Aboon, Sandgrain Bazaar, Rock Post, Tariff, Kusha, Southern Guard Camp, Central Guard Camp, Eastern Gateway, Northwestern Gateway, North Neutral Zone, Glish, Western Guard Camp, Velia, Olvia, Etheria, Florin, Calpheon, Kepler. And then because I saved this and this was like the height of the 3rd investment, this is actually missing just a couple of them, but you know, there's enough wagons here. So ultimately I had about 327 wagons that were in use, so at that amount of time. So you can see how many items that actually is. Up here we have a couple calculations. This isn't primarily like a spreadsheet guide so much, but just to give you guys a feel for what this is. So the current prices basically, so as I was tracking, I would update this from week to week. Like I would look at the benchos prices and say, okay, benchos are now selling for 6.8. So with all of the benchos I have, so at the very, very, very bottom, I would keep tabs. So again, this doesn't reflect the most I've ever had at one time. And this is the 3rd time that I filled them, sold them, filled them, sold them, filled them. So we're at that level of this. And remember, the first one was only for a few billion, it wasn't crazy profit. The next one was a lot bigger, and then the 3rd one was obviously the best. I had 2,842 benchos in my wagons, 44 pry benchos, 3 duo benchos. So you can see how rare it was for me to get the enhanced ones because I know the exit strategy wasn't as strong. 542 weapon cores, which, I mean, that's a pretty low number. I had thousands in other iterations. 22 Pry weapon cores, 425 Guardian Seals, 184 Good Deeds necklaces, probably 1 Tree Spirit belt, probably 31 red coral earrings, and these would be like a couple Scarlas and Witch, things like that. So if you melt down a Witch earring, you can get 2 sharp shards, 1 or 2 sharp shards, and if you melt down a Scarla necklace, you get 1 hard shard. So I would get a couple of those, but not primarily focused on those. Cool. So that's what we're looking at here. So anyway, what this would do is, so this is the current value of everything I have. This is not what I spent to get it. You can actually see from the video my prices that I spent, like what my price points were generally. But basically, so if bench shows at a certain week were 6.8 billion, then this takes the total amount of bench shows that I have and multiplies it by 6.8, and then gives me, you know, the after-tax value, taking the tax deduction of 84.5%, and that means all of my bench shows would be worth 16 billion at this particular stage of my wagon plan. But I wanted actually higher points, so I wanted to get to 9 billion. So this shows me, crap, uh-oh. All right, so that shows me what I want it to be. That's my target, and that showed me what it was currently. And I didn't always hit the target. It would be very close to it, but not always directly on it. And then same kind of thing, so we did it for values of Pry. So I had to work with very few labels because, again, I couldn't risk this being shown on stream, which occasionally, just for the heck of it, I would show like 1 or 2 things, like basically this stage, where all you could really tell is, okay, there are wagons in a place and there are numbers. There's probably something in the wagons. That's about all that people could get out of it. And I did that 1 or 2 times in the beginning, but I ended up trying to steer clear, because this became this insane wildfire based off of 3 days of me buying wagons and not telling anybody what I was doing with them. Originally, it was never meant to be this great reveal, right? There have been 3 think tank iterations on my stream of like these master strategies, whatever, that I found really fun to do. The first one was I actually played the game from the think tank. And if you don't know what the think tank is, it's this ridiculous thing that I built over here and now just kind of use it throughout my streams. Let's see. But I would actually play the game from this think tank here, and you couldn't see the gameplay and you didn't know what I was doing. And what I was actually doing in 2016 was I was playing on different servers, building guilds on servers I didn't play on, sniping nodes so that I could get my guild Exceptional Legion to go over and build alts on other servers, and I could do payouts so that we could all get money.
Go to guild ranks. Okay. Sort by owned territory. Read the top 4 and who owns them. There's a massive Legion guild that owns 4 territories with 1 member. You have Crescent Shrine and 3 other nodes. Holy shit, okay. One day servers will merge, I will be ready. I'm going to bring my guild over to divide the payouts. Wow, so you're going to be setting up your whole guild with alts on Uno to collect money to prepare for server transfers. That's fucking insane, man. Blade. Only you would come up with something like this, dude. Congratulations on your think tank.
And I did that for a little over a week, playing and streaming in the think tank, and there was another iteration of it later. So this is like the 3rd big think tank reveal, but it wasn't originally meant to be this crazy hype moment. You went to the forums and all that craziness, and then you guys want to shut up about it. So I apologize that it has actually taken me over a year to complete the whole plan. It was never intended. It was never meant to. Oops, I didn't mean to have that on there. It was never meant to be that sort of thing, right? It was just something that I was doing, and it was largely going to be secret, but it didn't stay that way because it was something you guys were just too curious about. All right, we got another spreadsheet here. So I know this is already kind of confusing, and most people basically just want to know what's in the wagons. They don't care too much about the detail, but this is really important to understand when you're learning to long-term invest. And primarily, you know, this video is about showing you guys what I did. It may or may not work in the future. The future is always in motion. Whenever you think something is going to work, you have these insane events that just turn it on its head. Yeah, I mean, you saw how I basically had to weather this storm and have varying degrees of success throughout almost 2 years. So, you know, this isn't saying, oh, this is the secret to how everything works. Like, we'll have to see what's happening in the future. I've already changed the way I invest after completing this the way I wanted to, but just at least understand what I'm doing here and what I did in the past. Okay, so one of the ways that I could understand at which point that I should sell my items and get the exact right amount of money for it is I studied it to a very minute detail. I kept track of how many benchos have ever been sold in the history of time on a certain day at a certain time. Okay, now this is just one of these spreadsheets that happens to be over the course of, it looks like July is what I was tracking. I don't know if I was buying or selling at this point, but this is just one of my price trackers. So what I was doing here was every day, not at the same time, but like around 24-ish hours, I would try to see, okay, how many have sold in the last 24-hour period. Now, the reason I did this is because without an event, without the prices falling down to astronomically low levels and all these investors beginning to buy them, I wanted to know what the average consumption rate was of this particular commodity in the server. So people buy benchos to either wear, throw on an alt or whatever, you know, enhance, or melt down. And because of the price caps in the past, you know, hard shards still being capped, at that point you would basically see the value of hard shards reflect accurately about 4 million. You could see this through pre-orders, and you could see this based off of the price of benchos. So I wanted to know the server's average consumption over a long period of time. So here we go. So I recorded, okay, so 343,542 benchos were sold at this particular date and time. Okay, here's 1 day later. Boom, here's what we got. We have this next amount of benchos that were sold. So when it comes over to here, we have this, now we have this second one minus this one, so we can see that within not quite 24 hours, I wasn't exact on this, and I honestly didn't think these would ever be a part of the guide, but I just want to explain it to you guys. This is the stuff that I did. I found out that 365 benchos were sold and were consumed at a particularly high price point. I believe that's what this is reflecting. So then the next day shows me 275, you know, 202, 351, 291. So I'm starting to build an image of how much the server is consuming. So how many of these disappear every day, right? Now I didn't have obviously numbers on how many are created every day from just normal farming, but knowing how the benchos are actually brought into the game, which is wilderness golems, it's relatively low. Now fast forward a little bit, here we have some of the numbers where it's post-event and the prices are now floored. So during the price flooring, there are actually many times when consumption was near 1,000 and sometimes, sometimes over that. So at this point, what I can understand is that your average consumption, which should be about the same, maybe it'll increase slightly, was, you know, 300 ballpark, but when the prices fell, you have an additional consumption of anywhere from 800 to 1,000, and the numbers don't have to be exact to understand what's happening, and that is an increase in investors. So sure, when the price goes down, more consumers exist, but largely I had to find out how many of these were being pulled out of the circulation of the economy, were not being destroyed, and other investors had. Now, whenever I could figure out that, then I knew basically by watching each day how many were sold, and whenever the events end and the prices go back up and the prices start going back down because investors want their money, I then knew how many extra of each accessory were in investors' banks. So I was able to wait until the investors had almost cleared out everything that they had to begin to put mine on the market, because at that point then the demand was still at a standard demand, but we no longer had this draining of supply that had to be cleared, and I could get mine out at a very high price. And I studied that for all of the 4 weapons, all of the 4 accessories that I utilized, and it's really interesting to see how different they were. I mean, you can see how the Guardian Seals had a very high consumption, generally because people understood, okay, you can melt down Guardian Seals for sharps. While it came to weapon cores, not as many people, at least at this time frame, were aware of it, because the prices really did reflect it. So there's a little bit of just discrepancy in what people understand, what people know. When it comes to good deeds necklaces, I was shocked to find that on average, about 50 or 60 of these things get consumed a day. A very low amount. And then when it comes to the price being floored, that purchase amount goes up to 200, 300 sometimes. Well, not generally that high, but over 100. So more than doubles. And these are ones that go into the bank. And I had to understand how many of these were being stored. So that allowed me to not just guess on when the selling point was, right? I could actually know. I could actually know exactly when, okay, there's just simply no more from this excess supply that came in from the event, within a very, very close margin of error. Obviously, there are people that will just have them, they'll put them in their inventory, they'll forget about it, log in 6 months, there'll be a couple extras. But I needed to know, economy-wide largely what was happening. And I was able to do it, which is great. What was great about all this is that, say there's another investor that maybe had 1,000 benchos or something like that. They had 1,000 benchos and I have 3,000 of them, right? And he wants to get his profit at a certain time and he thinks, okay, maybe this is going to be a problem. Well, if I start trying to sell mine, either if one of mine sells, that means one of his is not selling. And if one of his is not selling, he comes back the next day and he says, all right, I have to lower the price. So every single one that I sell that somebody else is not selling actually affects the price. It drops it down just because there's more of a supply. The demand would fluctuate, but independently of the increased supply. So you guys understand? So if I was too quick and there were too many more investors that were like, oh crap, the price is coming down, I would accidentally blow away my profit. It would just be poof, dust in the wind. So this allowed me to keep very good track of how many were actually being sold. So I want to at least explain that to you guys as well. Alright, a couple more things and we'll wrap this thing up. So I've been working on this video, this particular part 2, for quite a while, probably since March, I believe. So today it's now July 30th. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a kind of like a future cast update. So one of the reasons why I didn't invest in witch earrings or Scarla earrings, they each had their own reason. Witch, for example, the prices never went too far down simply because they have a high utility for players themselves. So while I was trying to buy things that could be melted down and extract their value based on sharps and hards based off of what the economy was doing, witches didn't have the same kind of price elasticity that I was looking for. So witches, while they're fine, they melt, they go up and down, things like that. That wasn't one that I picked. Another one was Scarla. Simply, they were too cheap for what I was doing. I couldn't easily turn over, 30 billion buying things that were worth $1 million a piece. So obviously no shame in if that is the best thing for you, that's great. Some of my first investments were buying like mushrooms and pumpkins for 68 silver and turning them over for like a few hundred later, so it doesn't really matter where you start off. But that was the reason why I avoided Scarla for the most part, and the reason I avoided witch earrings for the most part. Now this is my current wagon database. So what you guys saw was the master sheet, the pretty much like the template on the 3rd iteration of when I started to sell things. So this is current. So since then I actually had an extra 1,000 benchos after the first wagon reveal. and I wasn't going to sell them because the prices dropped down to about 1 or 2 million, and I also didn't reinvest. I just kind of kept my last 1,000, and I was just happy with that because, you know, things are always changing. Well, let's see what happened there. Quite a few things. So the prices were super low because we had the anniversary video, or the anniversary handout thing where we all got hard shards and sharp shards every day. It deflated all the accessory prices again. Super low, bottomed out. We had the aftermath of the central market, stuff like that, and a variety of other factors that are important, but this video is already long enough. Anyway, Shy came out, and so Shy is based off of defense gear largely. So these benchos actually went from the price where I paid anywhere from 2.7 to like 3.3 generally. They went up to 14 million. So I was able to sell an additional 1,000 for about basically 13 to 14 million just in the last 2 weeks. So that was great. Obviously the best markup I've had thus far. We still have some weapon cores, gonna hold off on that for higher prices, and some crappy, we got some pride benchos, those prices have stayed low. A couple guardian seals, these really aren't that big of a deal, but I ended up investing in 3,000 tree spirit belts. So I consider this to be the worst investment I've ever made. We will find out if it will work or not. Nothing has changed since my decision making to invest in this, but I basically skipped my own standards on most things for a variety of reasons, but generally the idea was there were 10,000 on the market over the last 4 or 5 months, and then there were 8,000 on the market, since 7,000, then 5,000, and I just watched it go all the way down to about 3,000, at which point it looked as if the natural consumption rate of these tree spirit belts were higher than the natural supply rate, which is pretty obvious. It's because nobody grinds the tree spirits to get tree spirit belts anymore. You get them rarely through mysterious belts. They come from rifts, but that's still, again, pretty sparing. So it makes sense. The natural consumption would be above the natural supply. But really, where we get these things is from events. So with just the easiest like swipe of the pen there for Pearl Abyss, there could be another big event, and then there could just be 10,000 more on the market. Anyway, I think the reason why I kind of wanted to go against my own rules here is because this is going to be one of the longest investments I'm going to do. So for me, this was about 10 to 12 billion. It's fine, it's a good amount, I guess. But at this point, I already have 2 PEN Crescents, I have a PEN Laytenn, I have a PEN Basilisk belt. So I'm basically a stone's throw away from over 300 AP. And I was just thinking, what is something that is a good item that I think is valued more than its minimum price of 3.4 million silver each, that has a chance of in the next year or 2 years or something, you know, going up quite a few, maybe 3 or 4 times its price. So this is one of those basically Hail Mary. I went against my standard principles. This is by far the worst investment choice I've made, but it still stands to possibly succeed one day. If it doesn't, I'm happy losing 10 billion. I don't actually care. So just to update you on my current spreadsheet, so the wagons are still in effect. I have that one, plus of course some black magic crystals. I think I grabbed like 3,000 of those. Most of those are in the warehouse though. But otherwise, let's see. So I wanted to emphasize a couple things. So I came up with a wagon system originally, as you know, 2017. So back then there was not the Arsha server, so we did not have a server to grind on for 50% increased loot. We did not have sea monster hunting. It existed, but it wasn't rampant and it wasn't accelerating at all. We only had 5 costumes per week that could be sold at 30 million. So the pay to win aspect was 150 million silver per week in terms of costumes. Well, now you can sell costumes for over 200 million each. You can sell 35 of them a week. So in today's economy, in today's scale, 250 million an hour is fine. It's still great. It's still one of the best things you could possibly do. But I want you to know this was designed in the context of where I was happy to make 30 million an hour. If I could do that, that was great. 35 was really pushing it. And through rare circumstances, I could get 40 million an hour. Things like underwater gathering in different spots, setting up Margoria specials, building sailor costumes and things like that, or golden Manos. So with specialized systems, you could start pulling 40 million an hour for short periods of time. So the reason I want to emphasize that is because Black Desert's going to be around a long time. And it's going to be around a lot longer than I'm going to be playing it. So this is kind of to edify the system and the time and place that this was created, so you guys can use it as a point of reference, because it won't be too long before 250 million an hour is something that can be done pretty routinely in this game. That is just the acceleration that they enjoy doing. It allows them to get new players and things like that. And well, I won't be playing this game forever. And I guess the last thing would just be, throughout 2018, whenever sea monster hunting did go crazy and we did have hyperinflation, so much silver was being generated in the game economy that the buying power of silver was diminished every single day, which meant that you could buy more today than you could tomorrow. So your buying power went down. Whenever you have hyperinflation in a system, it makes sense to invest in commodities. So even though I myself had never done any sea monster hunting to the extent past maybe 100 million or something in a year, so none at all, I still was able to benefit from it, watching the state of the economy, watching the influx of silver, and investing heavily into commodities that would then raise, of course. So obviously these events played a major part in dropping the price and raising the price in terms of changing the shortage, but along the lines of that happening, you have to watch what's happening to the silver supply as well. So with these tree spirit belts, if anything, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be playing going forward. I've really reached just about everything that I've wanted to do in this game over 3 years. I've tried to help as many players as I could along the way, so if you guys come over to my live stream, not sure what challenges and what game I'll be up to. But anyway, so these tree spirit belts at the very least will be a hedge against inflation, because we will have a lot of inflation, so that price could easily just naturally move up along the lines with other items, because it's a very good mid-tier item, plus it's the highest accuracy belt in the game. So as we see more people going for evasion builds and things like that, the overall demand on this item will increase. So that has been the Wagon Reveal Part 2, you guys. Part 2. If you made it through this, seriously give yourself a round of applause. This has been an hour long. If you haven't seen Part 1, seriously go watch that. If you guys refer anyone to any video, just Part 1. This is a very specialized video for those that wanted to know my entire thinking. As you can already figure out, I can talk about economics probably forever, especially game economics. Pop over to my live stream, twitch.tv/BladeBowQuest. I'll be focusing more on streaming going forward than I think YouTube guides. So I hope to see you guys there. I hope this gave you a ton to think about, and I really do hope this serves you. All right, see ya.